Hey, GAT Math students, this is video notes 1 through 3 for basic algebra review. So, you should be grabbing your packet, which look like this. If you don't have your packet, hit pause, go grab that, and you'll be copying the notes that I do in this packet. The 3 topics we're going to go over today is distributive property with variables, evaluate expressions, and evaluate expressions with order operations. So evaluate expressions just mean you're going to be putting numbers in for variables and solving. Okay, I'm going to do these a little out of order. So I'm going to do the examples I want to do for objective 1 first, then 2, then 3. So I'm going to be kind of turning the pages and things like that. If you need to hit pause and find the right problem and stuff like that, go ahead and do that. This should go a little quicker than some of our past subjects. So I'm going to turn to the second page and go to number 7. We're going to look at distributive property. So I won't go into big detail because this is something everyone has or should have seen in a different class before, but I'll review the steps. So distributive property is when you're taking some value on the outside, a number or a variable, and multiplying it by a group inside parentheses. Now, the ones we're going to look at are going to have 2 things inside the parentheses. It could be more. Okay, the steps would be the same. You're just doing more steps. But what you're going to do is when a number is next to parentheses like this, that means multiply. So we are taking -4 times the x plus 3, the group of x plus 3. So what we do is we take the first, or what's outside, we multiply it by the first term here. So -4 times x is just written -4x. Okay. Then we take what's on the outside and multiply it by the next term. So -4 times a plus 3. Now negative times a positive gives you another negative. And 4 times 3 is 12. Okay. Sometimes you could have wrote that like this. I think it gets a little more confusing, but this would be the same if you learned it to keep a plus there and go -4 times a positive 3. These 2 things are the same. Now the answer is not going to be written as this. It'll be written just like this. -4x minus 12. There's your answer. Okay. These steps would be the same if there was another term in here. We would just keep multiplying that -4 times the next thing. Okay. We're going to turn 2 pages and find number 12. Okay, this is going to be the same. There's just some different things I wanted to go over here. This one's going to be very similar. We take the 7 times the 2x. So 7 times 2 is 14. And there's also the x there. Then we take the 7 times a minus 5. So minus 35. So we got a positive 14x, a minus 35. Be letter B. Okay. Now, as you're doing these, if you're not understanding something, maybe circle that problem or whatever, and then send me a message and ask me a question at that point. We got one more distributive property one. Just go down the page here. 15. Okay. We have a negative on the outside. We're going -7 times just an x, so that's -7x. Now just remember here, we have a -7 and a -6. Okay, so a negative and a negative, that's going to turn into a positive, and then 7 times 6 is 42. Okay, now you could use calculator to figure out what 7 times 6 is, but hopefully you know that, but you can always check it with your calculator. So again, make sure there's a lot of answers that look similar here. Make sure your your 7x is negative, so they all are, so that's good. And then it's a plus 42, so it's letter A. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go to the next type of problem. We're going to go all the way back to the first page and find number 3. Okay, so when it says evaluate, that just means find the answer when the variables are the numbers that are given. So they're just saying x plus y if x is 14 and y is negative 5. Okay, so the parentheses here really don't mean anything because there's nothing on the outside of them. So we're just looking at x plus y. Now you just substitute in. X is 14. And we plus or add on to that whatever y is. Y is negative 5. Okay. Now, some people might just be able to look at this and do it right away. Other people might have to think of it and say, okay, 14 positives, 5 negatives. That means there's 9 more positives. Okay. If you did need to use a calculator, you'd probably use your phone for a calculator. I won't do this on every problem, but just to review how you would do this. I want that cleared. So we had 14 plus a negative 5. So you do 14 plus, now most calculators you would hit the 5, and then there's a little button like this, and just make sure it shows up negative 5. So we did 14 plus negative 5 is 9. Okay. If you have questions on how to use your calculator for this stuff, let me know. I can help you out. But that's generally how calculators would do your negatives. You'd hit the number and then hit the negative sign to put that in front. Okay, we're going to flip a few pages, go to number 13. Okay, this time they just say what the variables are first, and then here's the expression. So it says, what is the value? A minus B plus C. And I'm going to make sure that's a plus. My computer screen is kind of small. Let me look here. Yep. Just making sure it wasn't a division, but it's a plus. And now you just substitute in. So it says A is negative 11. And it says minus B. B is negative 2. So for now, I'm going to write that like this. A lot of books would do parentheses around that. You don't necessarily have to, as long as you put the negative up here. And then it says plus C, which is a positive 5. Now again, you could type this in your calculator. Okay. Otherwise, know that, remember the rules of minus a negative, that's the same as adding a positive. So what I do when I do that, it goes plus a positive. So anytime you subtract, it's like adding the opposite. Okay, so it was subtracting a negative 2. If I change that to plus, opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. So now I just go across and add these. You could do them in any order. If you did them in order and went negative 11 plus 2, that's negative 9. Plus 5 was negative 4. Okay, you could also say, well, positive 2 and a positive 5, that's 7. Negative 11 plus 7 is negative 4. Okay, again, if you absolutely need to, use your calculator for that. 17. This one should be pretty quick. X is 24, Y is negative 6, and they want to know what's X divided by Y. So X is 24, Y is negative 6. Answer is negative 4. Okay, because if you have one, remember when you're multiplying or dividing, if you have one negative, one positive, the answer is negative. If they're both positive, the answer is positive. If they're both negative, the answer is negative. Okay, that should be a review. But again, if you need help with that, let me know. And you could use your calculator. But that's something you should know. If they're both positive, the answer is positive. Both negative, the answer is negative. If there's one of each, when you multiply or divide, the answer is negative. Or sorry, I think I said something wrong there. Both positive, the answer is positive. Both negative, the answer is positive. I think that's what I said wrong. Then if it's one of each, the answer is negative. Okay. One more on this page. Again, x, y, if x is negative 5 and y is negative 7. So when you deal with variables, either two variables or a number and variable, if they're next to each other, that means multiply. So we're saying negative 5 is x, And a lot of times in algebra, they use parentheses to show multiplication. Times y is -7. So this means multiply. Technically, you could write it like this with a dot, or you could write it with an X, but when algebra, if you're using an X for multiplication, it sometimes can be tricky because you think that might be the letter X. So generally, this is the way to write it. So what you need here is 5 times 7 is 35. Since they're both negative, the answer is positive. Okay. All right. We just got one more type of problem to go, and we'll be done. You're going to go all the way back to the first page. You're still evaluating. So here we got V times W on the top, V plus W on the bottom. They want to know what the answer is when V is 6 and W is 11. So on the top, we have V times W. So we have 6 times 11. We just substitute in. On the bottom, V plus W. So 6 plus 11. So when you have a fraction with things on top and the bottom, you do the top separately, you do the bottom separately, and then see if you can simplify. So 6 times 11 is 66. And then on the bottom, 6 plus 11 is 17. Now, sometimes we might have to change this to decimal or mixed number or something, but here they leave it just the way it is. And there's your answer. Okay. Number 4, a similar problem. We have y divided by 3x and then minus z. Okay. When x is 2, y is 2, and z is 1. Okay. So make sure you're putting numbers in for the right things. So y is 2. That's a bad 2, but then we have the 3x, so 3 times x is 2. And then minus z, which is 1. Okay, so start simplifying things here. 2 stays on the top. 3 times 2 on the bottom is 6. Minus 1. Okay. Now, I'll show you where you could use your calculator at this point. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going as a fraction method and then show you. Fraction method, I'm going to simplify this. 2 goes into both 2 and 6. So this might be a little more difficult for some people very easy. So it just depends. I'll show you a different method here in a second. Now, if we're adding or subtracting, we need common denominators. So on the bottom, denominator is 3. Again, if this isn't making sense to you, you'll do it the other way in a second. Minus 1, or we need a common denominator. So we need 3 on the bottom. Well, then, this is like 1 over 1. If I get 3 in the bottom, I should have 3 in the top. And this unit isn't on fractions, so if this isn't making sense, I'll show you the other way in a second. Now, if you did this subtraction, 3 would stay on the bottom. On the top, you'd have 1 minus 3, which is -2. And this would give you the -2/3. Okay. If you don't like this fraction stuff, you could go from right this point or this point, and it'd be the same either way. If you need to do your calculator, we could go, let's see where I can put this. Do your fraction. Let's clear this. 2 divided by 6 would be 0.3 repeating. That would also be, if you did the reduced form, 1 divided by 3. So I'm not going to write it all out, but it just means keeps going. Minus 1. So if we go back to the calculator, if you have this number in your calculator, or if you cleared it and you have to retype it, hit a bunch of 3s. No, don't just do 0.33. 0.3 repeating minus 1 equals 0.6 repeating, and negative Negative 0.666 and so on. Now, obviously these aren't in decimal form, so you have to test these and see which one is right. If you don't know, you might look at this and know right away 2/3 is 0.6 and it's negative. We know this is negative, so we know these two are out. If you don't know which one of these are, you just test it. Take your calculator. If you don't know which one is 0.6 repeating, go 1 divided by 6 and see what it is. That's 0.16 repeating, so that's not right. And you could double check this if you didn't know. 2 divided by 3. Yes, that's the 0.6 repeating, and it needed to be negative. Okay. All right, almost done. 2 more. Go to number 9. Okay. You could do the distributive property here first. It says if D is 2, what is the value of -2 and then times D minus -7? And you could do this distributive property first, but I don't think you don't necessarily need to do that. You can just write this out, say -2, substitute in 2 for D. Okay, now the key here is you need to do, order operation says you have to do parentheses first. So you're going to leave the -2 on the outside. You either might know this, otherwise use your calculator. 2 minus 7 is -5. And now go -2 times -5. A negative times a negative is positive. 2 times 5 is 10. Answer is 8. Okay. And the last one, formula for converting degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius is C equals 5/9 times F minus 32. So they want you to find the Celsius when Fahrenheit is 59 degrees. Okay, so you would take 5/9 parentheses, F is 59 minus 32. So again, you have to do order operations. So you have to take 59 minus 32. That'll go in the parentheses, which is 27. Okay, so again, I'll show you 2 ways here. If you're doing fractions, that's like saying 5/9 times 21. Oops, what's that? Not 21, 27. It's like saying 27 over 1. Okay, and you can reduce, again, if this isn't making sense, I'll show you another way in a second, but you can reduce either up and down or diagonally. So here 9 goes into 9 once, goes into 27 3 times. Go 5 times 3 is 15. 1 times 1 is 1, answer is 15. You could have also done 15 times 27 and then divided by 9. That would have also been 15. If that fraction stuff isn't, so the answer is 15 degrees Celsius. If that fraction stuff isn't making sense, you can take your calculator, take what 5, you could take 5 divided by 9 in your calculator. 5 divided by 9. It's 0.5 repeating. If you see this one thing at the end, that means they're rounding it. So what it actually is 0.5 repeating. So ... If you cleared your calculator and you got to retype it in, make sure you just fill your calculator screen with 5s, 0.55555, and then take that times 27, and you get 15. Some calculators might give you 14.9999999. You just got to know, especially with the answers given, that that's 15. Okay, so there's a lot of other problems here. You can try different problems, see if you're getting right. Here are the answers. Okay, let me circle the ones we did, and I'll show you how you can use this page. there's two ways you can use this page. So we did 7, we did 12, we did 15, we did 3, 13, 17, 21, and we did 1, 4, 9, 14. So the way you use this page, first of all, if you did number 24, first thing you should do is see if you got the right answer. If you got C, good. If you didn't get C, then you look at it and say, well, how do I understand why they got C? If you do, good. If you don't, first thing you do is 24 is in this section of evaluate expressions. So are 3, 13, 17, and 21. So 24 is going to be like one of these problems. Check those out, see if you understand, then go back to 24 and see if you got it. If you don't, that's when you need to contact me and ask a question, and I'll help you out. Okay? So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, get these notes copied, take pictures of them, send them to me in a chat, and you'll get your points for it. Then practice some problems. When you're understanding, ask for the test.